Hi Planeteers and welcome to HBW. My name is Nthabeleng and today I'll be giving you a talk on biodiversity and food webs. On the hierarchy of models, Earth was just a bare rock that was exceedingly hot and dense. And as the universe expanded, it cooled due to continents moving away, as well as the circulating atmosphere and oceans. This allowed for life to move out of the oceans, and the planet was starting to become habitable. Remember the last talk we had on plants and photosynthesis? We learned how plants make their own food and store up energy from the sun as well as carbon dioxide from the air. We cannot tell if the planet is habitable by just focusing on one organism. So today, we'll talk about biodiversity. Let's look at the contents in the overview. We get to learn on the origin of species. And biodiversity can be defined in various ways. We can define it through genetic, species, as well as ecosystem diversity. It can be measured through alpha, beta, and gamma. However, biodiversity is under threat because of human activities and should be conserved. We do that by using the methods we know as ex situ and in situ. The interconnectivity of species through the food chains and the food webs, they form key part of understanding our planet's habitability. And through the trophic level, we see or we get to understand different feeding levels in an ecosystem. We also learn more on the resistance and resilience framework, which is a way of understanding how ecosystems respond to disturbance. Through biodiversity, we'll also get to see why South Africa is special. Let's get started then. Biodiversity is life in variety of forms, and there is major types of living organisms, which are animals, plants, fungi, protists, bacteria, as well as viruses. And all these living organisms, they work together to maintain what we call an ecological balance. Let's find out where these species came from. According to Darwin's theory of evolution, all life on Earth evolved from a single cell, and from this cell was millions of species, some not yet discovered till now. This was the beginning process of evolution that led to more forms of life. Ecological niche is a role an organism plays in a community, and it allowed for different species to live together. This also allowed for speciation or the formation of new species. Variation led to organisms becoming so different that they could no longer interbreed. Let me expand your knowledge by looking at different types of biodiversity. Species diversity is defined as the number of different species present in an ecosystem and relative abundance of each of those species. Diversity is great when all species present they are equally abundant in the area, and the more species that live or coexist in one area, the more biodiverse the ecosystem is, as you can see in the picture. Genetic diversity is variation in genes within a species or population. It is caused by mutation, random mating, and recombination. So there is plenty of room for genetic differences, as you can see in the picture. Lastly, we have what we call ecosystem diversity, which is the variation of ecosystems in a particular geographical location and their overall effect on the humans and the environment as a whole. For example, the difference between the biomes, as you see in the picture, we have the grassland and the forest. So grasslands exist where there is enough regular rainfall to support growth of a forest, but not enough to become a desert. But a forest, it occupies a favorable environment where moisture is adequate for growth and survival of trees. Now that we understand the types of biodiversity, let us see how we can measure it. We have what we call a species richness and evenness. Species richness is the number of groups of genetically related individuals, and evenness is the proportions of species groups present on site. So both species richness and evenness, they're important measures of biodiversity. Measuring biodiversity is helpful in determining the stability of ecosystems. We will look at different types of measures. The first one is alpha, which describes the diversity within a community. We have beta diversity, which allows us to compare between ecosystems. And gamma diversity is a measure of the overall diversity for the different ecosystems within a region. Let's look at some examples. So as we can see in the picture, we have three sides, right? We have side A, side B, and side C. And all these sides, they consist of fish of different color. So now we want to know the alpha diversity of side A. So inside A, we have black fish, we have green fish, and orange fish. So the alpha diversity of side A is 3 because it has 3 different species within the sides. And then we look at side B. So side B has 3 different types of fish also, which is the red, there's green, and is also orange. So the alpha diversity for side B is also 3 because it consists of 3 different fish within the sites. Same applies to side C. We have 2 alpha. The alpha diversity of side C is 2 because we have the green and the striped fish. So now we look at beta diversity. So we'll do that by comparing side A and B. So we want to know the difference between the two sides. And the difference is 2. The beta diversity of side A and B is 2. Why do I say that? Because in side A, you find that there's the green fish. You can find it inside A and also B. You can also find the orange fish inside A and B, but you can't find the red and black fish, which is the beta diversity of A and B. Now we'll do the same for side B and C. So the beta diversity between B and C is 3 because there is 3 different species when you compare these two sides. How? We have the green inside B, we also have the green inside C. But we don't have the orange inside B. We have the orange inside B, which is not there inside C. And we have the red inside B, which is not there inside C. And the striped inside C, which is not there inside B. So that's why the total beta diversity between B and C is 3. Then gamma diversity is the total diversity of a landscape and is a combination of both alpha and beta diversity. For example, you can see in the picture that we have different color of fish. The gamma diversity represents the different species of fish. We have the black, the orange, the green, and the red. So biodiversity measurements, they can be used to monitor ecosystem change and for deciding on which species to support. Biodiversity has been declining at a very alarming rate in the recent years, mainly due to human activities such as land use changes, pollution, climate change. Remember that we don't have humans yet in our models, but for us to explain biodiversity threats, we need to include humans. Many of the resources needed by human population to exist and expand, they are being taken from the environment in a very unsustainable manner. Hippos are aggressive, and they attack and kill. They're dangerous, but guess what? We have a very cute acronym from the word hippo, which teaches us the biodiversity threats. So the first one is habitat destruction. Habitat destruction is when we disturb the natural habitat of an environment. So we do that by building trees, building houses and bridges, and all the structures we need for survival. We also do that by cutting off trees and other activities we do that destruct the environment or the natural habitat of an environment. We have invasive species. Invasive species, they mean that these are species from other environments which come to the native land to disturb the native species. They do that by taking up too much space. They require a lot of resources for survival. And one example I can use to explain invasive species is the water hyacinth we find in the northwest. It takes up too much space. It grows more than, like, it reproduces more than the other species that are found in that area, and it also affects the water quality of the water in the northwest. How does it do that? By not allowing too much sunlight to enter inside the water, and also affecting the aquatic life of the water. We have pollution. So pollution comes from, like, our daily activities. The more we live, like, the more we produce waste, the more we pollute the environment. The activities that we do, they pollute the air, they affect the soil and the water. So that's how we produce pollution, and it's a big problem because it threatens our natural environment. So that means we pollute more than we rehabilitate the environment. We have population. So population means increase in population, meaning that there's no longer the birth rate is more than the death rate, which means that now we have a rapid growth in population. And it's a problem because it leads to the next threat, which is over exploitation. If there's a lot of us, then we start overusing resources, and we put more pressure on the earth to a point where it can no longer sustain us. So those are the threats, and these threats have caused a very unprecedented rise in the rate of species extinction, as well as climate change and global warming. So my question to you is, are we in the sixth mass extinction? And what is that? Like, you might be wondering, what is a mass extinction? So mass extinction is a rate at which species are being extinct. The rate at which species being extinct is faster than normal. And this process started 1 billion years ago, and scientists believe that we are now facing the sixth mass extinction. So I want you to go back and learn more about the first till the fifth mass extinction so that you'll be able to answer this question. So now that we've seen that our planet is under threat, we need to come up with ways in which we can protect it. And we can do that by conserving. Conservation is the care and protection of these resources so that they can persist for future generations. It includes maintaining diversity of species, genes, and ecosystems, as well as functioning of these on the environment, So as you can see on the picture, we have our ecosystem services. So ecosystem services are benefits that we get from ecosystems. So these are services provided by ecosystems without us working hard to get them. We don't do anything actually to get these services. These are services like your air quality, your climate, your water runoff. We have photosynthesis, your natural medicines, ecotourism. So all these are benefits we get from, like, the environment without us having to do anything. So as much as we want the environment to take care of us, we also have to keep it in a very healthy manner so that the more we take, the more it can produce for us. We will look at different ways in which or different methods in which we can conserve species. The first one is in situ. So in situ, it means the natural or original home of species. It is the method of conserving all living species, especially the wild and the endangered species, in their natural habitat or environment. For example, we have Kruger National Park, which is the largest game reserve in South Africa, and also the Addo National Park, which is the only park in the whole world to provide shelter for the African's Big Seven. It has your lion, your buffalo, elephant, rhinoceros, your leopard, whale, as well as the great white shark. Another method we can use to conserve biodiversity is ex situ. So ex situ is conservation technique which levels all biological diversity outside the natural habitat through different techniques like your zoo, captive breeding, aquarium, botanical garden, and the gene bank. And one example we can use is the Kirstenbosch National Botanical Garden, which is acclaimed as one of the great botanical gardens in the world because it has 7,000 plant species and it is also part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. So a quick recap, we looked at biodiversity and we saw that biodiversity can be measured through alpha, beta, and gamma. We also looked at types of biodiversity, and we also saw from the Charles Darwin theory where species originated from. We also talked about the types and measures of diversity, your threats, and how then your threat through the HIPPO method, which you're not supposed to forget, and how we can conserve biodiversity. Now we're going to focus on food chains and food webs. The relationship among species is a very important part of biodiversity. So a food chain is a linear sequence that shows the transfer of energy and nutrients from one organism to another within an ecosystem, while a food web is more complex and realistic representation of the feeding relationship in an ecosystem. So plants and animals, they interact with each other, and the relationship among them is very important for biodiversity. So the linear relationship that we described for a food chain, you can see it on the left side of the picture, and the one for food web on the right. So we're going to look at trophic levels and how energy is transferred from one level to the other. There are 5 main trophic levels within a food chain, each of which differs in its nutritional relationship with the primary source. The primary energy source is the sun, and the primary producers are usually plants and algae, which perform photosynthesis in order to manufacture their own food. Primary producers make up the first trophic level. We also call them autotrophs. The rest of the trophic levels, they are made of consumers, also known as heterotrophs, because they cannot produce their own food, so they must consume other organisms in order to acquire nutrition. Energy decreases as it moves from one trophic to another, and heat is lost as metabolic heat. Also, we see that only about 10% of a level's absorbed energy is absorbed on the next one, which shows us why the vast majority of energy is lost as heat to the environment. In order for us to have ecological stability, we need to have resilience and resistance within the system. The resistance-resilience framework is a way of understanding how ecosystems respond to disturbance. Resistance is the ability of an ecosystem to withstand disturbance, while resilience is the ability of an ecosystem to recover from the disturbance. For example, producers are often the most important for resistance, as they provide the base of a food chain and they are essential for ecosystems functioning. Why is South Africa special? South Africa is the third most biological diverse country in the world. It has different biomes, which are savanna, thicket, grassland, forest, fynbos, namakaru, succulent karoo, and the desert. And it is one of the 17 mega diverse nations, which is home to over 95,000 known endemic species. It is also top 3 globally for plant and marine biodiversity, and it is home for fynbos biome, which is the highest beta diversity of the ecosystem. We can say that South Africa is a global treasure for biodiversity because South Africa's economy is highly dependent on its biodiversity. This diversity makes it the whole country unique and special. In summary, we learned what biodiversity is, the origin of species, types and measures of diversity, the threats, and how we can conserve our biodiversity. We also looked at food chains and food webs, and we saw how energy travels from one trophic level to the other, and the importance of resilience and resistance in ecosystems. And we also looked at why South Africa is special. Earth is a beautiful living planet in the universe and the common habitat of more than 7 billion human populations and millions of species of biodiversity. It is essential for the processes that support all life on Earth. The next talk will focus on biochemical cycles and how nutrients are recycled into the Earth system. I thank you.